the revolution that we're really seeing in medicine, in materials, and in food that we talked about originally there, Michelle. In medicine, I think we're at the start of a revolution of the medical arts that is going to go for at least the next 10 or 20 years. We're now using genomic tools to read and write DNA, and we're treating diseases less like some poorly organized set of symptoms that we grope for in the dark and try to find roots and potions to treat. And it's becoming more like a way to look at an imbalance in information flows, and that we can go in and correct it directly or even program around what's going on. My favorite example of this that's going on right now is CAR T, reprogramming the immune system to be able to go after different cancers. This is the same technology that Andre, of course, is working on at Cellectis. And there are several different technologies that are along these same lines, cheaper and more effective monoclonal antibodies, stem cell transplants, the ability to do better and better drug delivery, including delivering gene editing tools directly to cells and tissues and organs. And we're going to see the costs here, I think, go up and then go down very quickly if we do this right. A good example, again, for this is, to me, is CAR T. Right now, the first technology, CAR T technology approved for use, starting to be approved globally, approved in the US by Novartis, costs about $500,000 US to do treatment because it has to be personalized and basically made from the cells of the patient that's being treated. But we're going to be able to do things like go to off-the-shelf CAR T, where we'll have more and more people who have gone through this treatment will become universal donors, and we'll collect a library of these cells, and we'll be able to use these without having to recreate the treatment for every patient. For material, for number two, I think that that is something that we are going to see over the next 5 and 10 years. Most of the things that we now dig out of the ground or manufacture with high energy and high waste processes in centralized chemical plants, we're going to grow. And I mean literally grow, sometimes like plants grow or like bacteria grow. We're going to use especially industrial microbiology, and think about having big vats that just continually produce drugs and chemicals and enzymes and plastics and more things. And we'll also use this technology to recycle really everything. So anything that we can make, we can unmake. We'll close all of our environmental loops. If you think about a mobile phone, that's one of the most polluting things that we can have to both make and to recycle. And a lot of us replace our phones with the next technology every year. And this is becoming a global problem. Think about having that just go through a grinder and go into a big vat of goo that separates it out into its component parts for reuse. And then we'll see even large structures and complicated machines like computers produced this way. And DNA itself, we're already finding ways to do DNA, and I know that that's the work that Sylvain does at DNA Script. At some point, too, we're going to be able to do amazing things where we'll have materials that self-repair and are able to communicate with each other. And it's going to start to look less like biotechnology and more like nanotechnology. But the thing that's happening right now that we talked about, and I'm always encouraged when one of my prophecies comes true, is what's going on with food. And I think we're going to use every tool in our arsenal, everything at our disposal to increase the amount and quality of food on the planet for everyone on the planet. We're already seeing a new generation of gene-edited plants and animals where we're editing in new traits, things like golden rice with vitamin A, and that's a nutrient that a lot of the world's population misses out on regionally. Soy that will grow under drought conditions. Potatoes that are consumer friendly, that don't turn brown, that don't have bumps on the surface, that are easy to peel. And things like, I don't know, Andre's, one of his companies that spun off Helix does work like this for low-fat soybean oil and wheat that is low gluten and high fiber. So we'll see things like this, and we'll see more and more things, even to the point where we just saw this last several months, a photosynthesis hack that's been published. It was work done at the University of Illinois, where they were able to increase the yield of plants by reorganizing how photosynthesis works in the actual plant cells, so that the yield goes up by 40%. And so we'll see more and more things like that. But I think the biggest thing happening today, right now, and the part I want to end with, is this cellular agriculture, this idea that we can grow meat outside of an animal, and that we can go ahead and have all the advantages of having that meat without killing the animal, without having the environmental cost of the animal, you know, where we kill it and throw away 40% of it, where we have to raise the food and the water that is spent on this and the waste that comes from this. We're also starting to see plant-based protein substitutes like the Impossible Burger. So this idea that we can go ahead and feed the world and feed them on a high-protein diet, not a peasant diet, and do it without harming our environment and without harming animals themselves, is actually starting to become a reality. I know this sounds like a utopia. There's some dark sides. I don't want to minimize that. We have huge possibilities for mistakes. We have huge possibilities to widen the economic gap between the richest and poorest people. We have possibilities to go in really wrong directions with poorly thought out regulations. But to me, this is the most exciting thing probably happening in technology today.
Wow. Thank you, Raymond. I have a ton of questions because, you know, at the club, we are focused on the reality of those revolutions and how we can be prepared to face those revolutions. If today I'm an entrepreneur or a C-level member from a company or an organization, what can I do to be prepared to face this new revolution in the next 5 years?
Sure. I think I can think of 3 or 4 important things for C-level executives to be aware of. One of them, the first one, is to look for orthogonal disruption from biotechnology. And what I mean is not just, you know, all of us are familiar with this idea of disruption now, but, you know, someone in the mining industry, who would think that biotechnology could actually affect and disrupt their market? But I think that it's incredibly at risk and right in the crosshairs. Or most manufacturing, any kind of manufacturing, biotechnology and this industrial microbiology will start to disrupt, and has already started to disrupt, supply chains for different people. And it will look like a little tiny side thing until it's huge. Number 2, I would say, is anytime you're dealing with any high technology, but especially biotechnology, confirm that the science works. Make sure, if you are bringing something into your company or you're an investor, you know, the cautionary tale of Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos is something everyone should pay attention to. And here was an example where the story sounded so good, but nobody checked the reality of whether this could work and did it work. And one of the big things I would say, anytime anybody's incorporating some technology, or especially if they're investing in the technology, whenever I do the investments that I do, whenever I work with the funds that I work with, we are always talking about how we are looking for the picks and shovels. And this is, you know, a common Silicon Valley gold rush analogy. The idea that the people who make money in the gold rush are not the ones who headed out into the wilderness and grabbed their pans and started trying to find gold, but the people who sold them the tools, sold them the picks and the shovels. They had good licensable technology. They had good tools that needed to be used to bring about the revolution. Sylvain's DNA synthesis technology, DNA script, Andre's gene editing technologies at Selectus are incredibly good examples of this, and I know that you're going to get a chance to talk to them here in just a little bit. The final thing, and I'll cut it short because I think everybody should listen to the people working in the field. is monitor the regulation. The regulatory authorities have are a wild card in this field. They have a chance to really either stand in the way or pave the way for these technologies to work. And having good regulation will enable nations and companies to compete on the world stage.